I'm Laura.
And I'm Lisa.
And this is the Paid Media Playbook, where we talk to marketing professionals about their challenges, tactics, and triumphs.
Join us here at Double Z Media for weekly conversations about media strategies for marketing leaders.
Welcome, Rachel Horgan. Now, Rachel is like a multi-talented Seattle expert and event expert. And today we're going to talk about both of those things. We're going to talk about her podcast, and we're going to talk about a little bit about getting sponsorships for events. Why don't we start with that? Marketing directors out there who are listening to this, I know that they oftentimes are like, can you find a sponsor? We're a media agency. So it's like, yeah, if I know somebody, because it really does help me because it increases our budget for paid media, right?
Right.
But what do you, how do you go about doing that for your events?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. Like you said, I run a podcast, so I am so used to interviewing other people. So I was just saying it's fun to have a little role reversal. And you and I met when I spoke at a marketing event. And when I heard you speak, I was like, I feel like she should have a podcast because you've got such a podcasty voice. So
thank you.
Thank you for having me on. Yeah, in terms of sponsoring an event, I worked for the Puget Sound Business Journal here in Seattle, so a local business newspaper. And we ran about 30 to 40 events a year. So those are going to be a mix of awards events, women of influence, 40 under 40, that kind of thing, and then some panel discussions. And every single one of those events, I was the director of events, and every single one of those, we had sponsors, we had banks, we had healthcare companies, big and large companies. So I got to see a lot of what works well and what doesn't. So I'm happy to share a few things that I've picked up from it, but one would be really intentional. If you get a speaking opportunity, let's say you sponsored an event and they give you 60 seconds at the beginning of the program, or you get a 2-minute pitch at the beginning. I think try to be really intentional about what that is. Maybe hire somebody to help you with that speech. I will give a quick example. We had somebody that sponsored our Family Business Awards. She was a wealth management company. She spoke really briefly. I want to say maybe 1 to 2 minutes, and she walked away with 3 clients. So I think it speaks to, don't just get up there and do a commercial for your company. Like, obviously you're selling your company, but if you just read your mission statement, if you just read something, if you give us some boring information, it's not going to have an impact.
Elaborate on what she did to get 3 clients.
I mean, I wish I recorded it. This was a couple years ago. But I think the biggest thing was she was really authentic and spoke directly to the audience. I think alongside why this worked is also being intentional about which events you're sponsoring. And more people doesn't always mean a more beneficial result for you, right? So for her, she sponsored Family Business Awards. We probably had 100, 200 people in there, and we do much larger events, but it was the right people. It was the right people in the room, and the missions aligned, so it worked out. So I think that would be kind of my second piece, is not only looking at numbers, but looking at what's the right fit.
Oh, I love it.
What would you say a successful sponsorship looks like at the end of the day? Getting new clients obviously is great, but how do you sort of quantify that otherwise?
Yeah, it depends on what your goal is. So sometimes people just want brand awareness. I know somebody just sponsored one of my events, my own personal events for my podcast. I did a 1-year anniversary party, and her goal was really, she just started this media company. She wanted to get her name out there. Sure, it'd be nice to get some clients, but she just wanted more people to hear about it, more people to see her logo, that kind of thing. So it depends on your goal. I also think, I think I said this at the event, Laura, that it's really hard to measure ROI for events. It's incredibly difficult. And I think we just need to be okay with that gray area, because there's intangible value that we're never going to be able to write down on paper, but people felt good. They maybe will remember it. You don't know if that's their 6th touch with your brand or your 7th touch or whatever it is, but sometimes you just have to trust that it was worth it.
Do you feel like, most of your events that you've done in the past are kind of B2B, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense. We do a lot of consumer events and trade show type things, but it's all consumer, like the Northwest Flower and Garden Festival, you know, so stuff like that. And just, I think of it obviously differently on that side, because it's attendance, where the vendor's happy. So this is good to hear it from your perspective.
Oh, from a planning? I was going to say if you're an exhibitor, because I used to work for a company where I oversaw the trade show, the sponsorships and the exhibitors. And one thing that was frustrating is, as a planner, my job is to get people to your booth. My job is to create a map and an incentive and put the cookies in one area and the popcorn in another area. That's my job, create traffic. Your job is, once they're right in front of your booth, your job is to bring them in. And I see a lot of people get mad at the event planner and say, nobody came to my booth. And I just want to push back in that, like, once they're in front of it, like, you need to have some sort of game. You need to go approach them. You need to come up with something kind of interactive or a photo or something, because just the standard table and linen isn't going to cut it anymore.
Yeah, the pull and drape, they call it, right? Yeah, and what about, do you ever have any, like, how are you supposed to help if you're only hiring booth babes and you don't actually have your employees working there? I think I've seen that over the years on B2B, and it's like, well, the booth babes, but it's like a musician, professional music, it was the NAM, the National Association of Musicians or whatever. It's the pro audio big event, and just 100% booth babes.
Yeah, I know it happens. I do have one other thought on advice if you're sponsoring events.
Yeah.
And that's to get creative. So as an event planner, I'm, like I said, I was planning at the time 30 to 40 events, and you're kind of focused on just getting the event off the ground. And so if you have an idea as a sponsor, like, hey, I want to bring in, for me, there was a long line at some point at this like stadium that I was doing an event. And she was like, can I bring some entertainment for people while they're in line? And what if I brought a character artist? And I was like, great, that sounds great, do it. And, just not be afraid to kind of come to them with ideas. And another example really quick is we did our 40 under 40 awards once, and Alaska Airlines, there wasn't enough time for people to talk with each other there because it was a huge party. And so he planned with us a private dinner for just the 40s and their plus ones. That's not something we were planning on doing. He approached us with it. It made sense for us. It made sense for him. So I think coming with your own ideas to an event planner is a good suggestion.
Can you think of any red flags that you've noticed with sponsors that kind of tell you right off the bat they might not know how to manage this relationship well or not get the most out of their sponsorship?
I can tell some of the ones that maybe are doing this to check a box and that don't really care, which I guess is kind of fine, but it's the ones that are like, I'll email them, be like, okay, well, these are your benefits. Do you want a giveaway item? Do you want your speaking remarks? Do you want XYZ, your ad? And some of them are like, no, because I think to them, they just want to be associated with that brand, whatever it is, or they're busy or whatever it is. But I don't know if that's a red flag. It's just something I've noticed that some companies are like, don't care, just put my name up there, whatever. Yeah. But I don't know. I feel like there's more you could do. I think you should take advantage of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm in a couple of organizations, and we should just get sponsorships. And it requires value. So, and if you get value, make the most of it. But I think on both sides, as a sponsor, push for value, right? Push for what value you can get. I mean, how many times are you going to post me on social? How many times are you going to, negotiate getting that good stuff? Because I feel like I've done the same thing where I've seen we have a lot of media sponsors, and they're like, oh, just put a sign up, by the stage, the radio station sign. And it's like, well, you could do more. I mean, my client will do whatever you want them to do.
I know. So am I allowed to ask? One of them said if I could ask you guys a question.
Of course.
So I started a podcast, as you mentioned. It's a roundup of the local business news here in Seattle. So every week I go through the top 4 or 5 articles, and I have a different CEO on each week to give kind of context to the news, and we get to know their story. My goal this year is to kind of be on the other side of this conversation that I'm used to being on, which is like, I want them to sponsor my own podcast, and how can I pitch? Any advice on how to pitch that? Some advice I've already gotten is to not focus solely on the numbers, but to focus on my brand and what I stand for, and for people to be aligned with that. But any other advice you guys can give me on how I should approach some of these conversations?
Especially with what I always think about, like, and I don't know how this works, Lisa, from a paid media, we place a lot of ads to people during podcasts. And if you allow ads on your podcast, is there a way to get paid for that?
There is. It depends on what publication distribution platform you use. I don't know. I'm personally familiar with Captivate and Buzzsprout. I don't know which one you use, Rachel. Yeah. So, and that's more of that's part of the auction system, right? Someone says, hey, I have a 30-second slot in the middle of my podcast and you can bid on it. And then whoever bids on it wins it. But then it sounds like you're talking more about sponsorships where you read the
That's
copy.
What I'm thinking. Yeah. Just because I am a local Seattle business. So it would make sense to approach somebody, but I'm still figuring out. I've made up some packages. I've had some conversations, but you guys, obviously want to hear from you too.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, like, if you had your ideal, like, where do you feel like you would have your ideal? Is it a local business? Would that be a conflict? Would you want it to be or is it the business journal sponsoring you, or is it?
I would think a local business, but then I obviously wouldn't put them on. If we're talking shit about one of the companies, I'm not gonna be like, also they're a sponsor. I'm not gonna, Alaska Airlines was talking about potentially sponsoring, and I was like, yeah, okay, I'm not gonna cover a plane crash when Alaska Airlines is sponsoring. So I think I would tailor that. But yeah, I think I would picture like a local business.
Yeah, I know you mentioned like focusing more on the value of your content and less on the numbers. And I agree. And sort of like you mentioned with the sponsorship event earlier, it's the quality of the people you're reaching, right? Not just the quantity.
Right.
So any information you have on who's listening, I think can make it really attractive to a potential sponsor.
Yeah.
And this is primarily business news?
Yes. Specifically Seattle business news, yeah.
So it's perfect. I mean, Alaska's perfect with all the business travelers, right?
Yeah, that's true. Well, they sponsored my 1-year anniversary party, so that one worked out. And then I had my friend who started a media company. So I think there was some synergy there.
Absolutely. Do you have a dream sponsor? I mean, you bagged Alaska. Who's next?
Yeah, gosh, I don't know. I don't know if I have a dream sponsor. I like a lot of the business. I've learned a lot about different businesses here in Seattle, obviously through my time at the Journal, but then also through this research. So I think they're all kind of like, I like them all right now. I like a lot of them. So
You mentioned hitting your 1-year anniversary with your podcast. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I feel like it's a lot easier to start one and a lot harder to keep it going.
That is true. There's some stat, fact check me, but I'm pretty sure it's 8 out of 10 podcasts don't make it past 10 episodes. I believe 80% of podcasts don't make it past 10 episodes. So congrats to you.
Why is that? Because
it's easy to start a podcast and it's really hard to maintain it. I think people run out of things to talk about. They run out of steam. Mine's every week. I don't know how often yours is. And it's really hard to see the return. Like building a podcast takes so long. You don't just like the next day have twice as many listeners, and I think you have to be in it for a couple of years to finally start to see some of that growth.
Did we answer? We didn't really answer your question. Did we answer your question?
I think so. I mean, yeah, I feel like you got enough out of that.
You're looking for revenue as well. So is there ways to get it so that you can have like the bidding go on and like what we do, Lisa?
Yeah, that is such a different like impact on your listeners. It's so much more personal and engaging when it's actually the podcaster reading the copy out. And I get wanting to keep your podcast, like being able to maintain that control over the voice and tone and everything.
Yeah. And I think it just like makes sense with what I'm covering, right? Like I'm talking to local businesses in Seattle. It'd be weird for a commercial to come on and be like, Tempur-Pedic is here to support you. Like I just feel like it would be kind of jarring for the listeners, but also, you know what? Money's nice. So maybe I sell out and I get the national sponsors. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, have we talked to anything about paid media or what you do to promote your podcast? What do you do?
I haven't paid for it yet, so I could start to do that. But I've been doing just a lot of networking, a little bit of trade, trying to get some interviews. I am interviewing somebody at the Northwest Event Show, which is a large show for event planners here in Seattle, and I'll be on the main stage, obviously representing my podcast and doing a shout out and doing another panel with Elevate Seattle. So I'm trying to put my name out there and connect with people, but I do think I want to start looking. 2024 was my creating year. I think 2025 is let's get this bigger, let's build it up. And I think it's probably time to start investing in something like that.
Absolutely, yeah. And especially with all of these social media platforms sort of deprioritizing organic content and just making it harder and harder to reach people, even when they want to see what you're doing.
It's so true. It's so true. Yeah. So I'll be experimenting on a few different things, I think.
Yeah. I always feel like both the hero and the bad guy when I come into an organic social media conversation, because it's like, no one is seeing all of the hard work you do. I can fix that. Give me money.
Yeah.
That's so true. Yep. And they really do think it's like, what is it, like 5% now or something?
I think it's like 10% of your followers. Actually
are going to be for, yeah.
10% of your followers see what you're posting. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I believe it because how many people am I following on Instagram? Like 1,000 or something more. And I feel like I see the same 7 people and it's like, why is it the person I don't like anymore?
Exactly. I know. So it is worth it. I've been trying to get MCI to do that. Like just get out there and, LinkedIn, it's like $200.
I feel like LinkedIn might be the route because I think Facebook and Instagram is a little crowded in terms of sponsored content. So maybe I'll try LinkedIn.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. And it's easy to target exactly who you want to, like decision makers at businesses.
That is true.
So still trying to think of your ideal sponsor, because it would be something big or like
I was thinking like a bank or a healthcare system just because they have money.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but they do. What about a plumber?
That's true. I mean, it really could be anybody because the audience,
so much money.
Like it's a lot of the general audience in Seattle. So it could be anyway, it could be a restaurant. Like it could be anybody that wants to tap into my network.
I was just saying though, like plumbers and smaller, like owned, you can go meet the owner. You don't have to go through a bunch of bureaucracy.
Right.
That's the kind of thing that I think would be easier than Virginia Mason.
Yeah.
And you'll probably get the same amount of dang money. And then you can have them on and like a little, and there's a lot of, there can be, I'm not going to say this in, case anybody's listening, but just there may be some ego in there that helps that.
I was approached, I don't know if this is a new idea, if you guys have heard about this, but somebody wanted me to do a live podcast at one of their conferences for their client. And they would pay me, I would obviously be there interviewing, I'd bring in some video, and then it would be an upcharge for it to be like a regular episode on because I asked them like, do you want me to do this interview and you can have the content, you can post it on your channels, or do you want me to on my channels? And obviously that's going to be an increased cost because it's my brand and my audience. Maybe it's a regular episode, maybe just a special episode, but I'm looking into more of that kind of stuff. I don't want to be, again, I'm like worried about selling out where I'm just like, highest bidder gets to be my guest. But
right.
Well, and you mentioned too being worried about like, well, if you have a sponsor, you're not going to share news stories that put them in a bad light. And so how much is that going to affect your content, and will your listeners still like react the same way?
Yeah, I think it's a fine line to walk. I think there's a lot of, I'd actually be curious if there's any kind of regulation around this, because when I was at the newspaper, you obviously have to declare whether it's sponsored. You've seen this on Instagram. You have to declare whether that's sponsored. What are the regulations in podcasting? And let's say I say like this episode's sponsored by, Bank of America, but do I say, and that's why this guest is on here, he paid X amount to be, not obviously, but yeah, like how much to disclose and how much to change your product.
If it's sponsored and you're saying it's sponsored and that person's on, then you're saying this is sponsored content.
Yeah.
It doesn't, you can do whatever you want if you say it's sponsored content.
Yeah.
Seriously.
It's true.
Yeah. Someone's paying for it. And it's like, and I know, and I'll use an example. If you're feeling like ethically weird, I think of like NPR, and they cover stories all the time. And they're like, talking and, full disclosure, McDonald's is an underwriter for NPR.
That's true. Yeah.
But anyway, here's a bunch of shit about them. Yeah. And so they cover it anyway. Yeah. I think that's cool. It keeps it kind of, ethical.
I just think it's cool to see the different ways people are using advertising and how we're incorporating podcasts. Podcasting has just become so much more popular, and how we're partnering with them and bringing them into events and what that looks like. So I'm excited to explore that.
Absolutely.
Well, what's your next big thing?
My next big thing?
Seafair and 4th of July?
Yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah. So I quit my job last year and I took a little break, and then I went full freelance, which is terrifying. And I've had a couple different clients I've worked for. I'm here at the Avalera office right now. I'm finishing up with them. It's a local tech company. And then I just signed on with Seafair to be their entertainment coordinator. So I'll be, securing the entertainment for their main stage at 4th of July. I don't know if people know that they put on the Gasworks Park celebration, and then also Seafair weekend and maybe a couple other things. So I just started with them, and I'm really excited to do that.
And how do you are you kind of hooked into the music scene here? How does that work?
Yeah, well, so in addition to events, I always kind of have a side hustle. So currently the podcast is a side hustle, but before that, it was very much the music scene. I started an a cappella group, but I don't sing. I just wanted to start a group. And so that group is still going strong. There are like 16 members. It's just for fun.
You don't sing?
I don't. I just wanted to create a space.
I have an a cappella group, but I sing.
That's so cool. Well, we should connect.
Yeah, we're the Silver Bells.
Silver Bell.
We sing only on the holiday, and we usually win the Great Figgy Pudding Caroling Competition.
I've heard about Figgy Pudding.
Most creative.
Wow. Yeah, our group is Minor Adjustment. I've stepped back. This is a couple of years ago, so the directors handle it all now. But,
so fun.
Yeah. And then I worked with a local musician. I kind of helped her on some stuff and like the business side of it with Kate Dinsmore. Shout out to her. And then I've been booking musicians for different restaurants. Again, all of this kind of on the side. So I think throughout that time, I've gotten to know a lot of the Seattle bands. And I still have a lot to learn, but I'm excited to use those skills with Seafair.
Nice.
So I love Seafair.
Thank you so much for joining us. This has been really fun to talk
Rachel.
to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Before we let you go, our final question, if you could go back in time and give yourself at the beginning of your career one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Invest in some better clothes, I guess. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I feel like I was always just like not professional enough. But I don't know. I think I'd say like kind of trust that it's all going to work out. I think there's jobs that I really thought I was going to get and I didn't. There's jobs that I thought I really wanted and then I hated it there and I had to quit after a couple months. And there's this fear of like, am I going to make it? And I think just trust that it does work out. I think I had to think about that a lot when I quit last year. And I really wasn't sure if I was going to be able to make it freelance work. I thought I was going to be like valeting cars, which no offense to that. I just thought I was going to have to like really, scrap by. And the clients have showed up and the jobs and the opportunities have shown up. So I think just trust your network and trust your skills. It's all going to work out.
That's wonderful. I don't think you should discount the getting better clothes advice too, though.
Well, shout out to Armoire. It's a local company here. I had the founder on and she gave me a free trial, which is a clothing rental company. And I didn't realize how much that affects your confidence and your self-worth and like just how you present yourself in a room. So they've styled me for a couple different events and it really has made an impact. So it's top of mind for me.
Very cool. Well, thank you again for joining us and we'll have to talk soon.
Thank you both. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks for listening to the Paid Media Playbook. Want more content like this? Follow our agency, Double Z Media, on LinkedIn. You can find the link in the episode description.